The high school alumni group chat started pinging in the dead of night. Someone, probably bored and nursing a drink, threw out a prompt. 3 keywords to describe your high school experience. Go. The chat, which had been dormant for years, suddenly saw a name pop up that made my heart skip a beat. It was Camille-Camille Sterling, the undisputed prom queen of our graduating class. Vibrant, she wrote. Passionate. Then, after a deliberate pause, she added one more. And Nate. The chat exploded. Even after a decade, they were still the it couple of our high school's tragic lore. The rebellious wealthy bad boy and the ethereal, gentle honor student. They had loved each other with a raw, burning intensity that everyone envied, only for it to end in a messy, rain-soaked heartbreak the summer after graduation. Every person in that chat had been a witness to their epic saga, including me. I shifted my gaze to Nate, who was sleeping soundly beside me. The jagged edges of the boy I once knew had been smoothed over by time and tailoring. Nathaniel Vance was no longer the leather jacket-wearing delinquent. He was my husband, distinguished, composed, and completely, utterly indifferent to me. That old thorn, the one I pushed deep into my skin years ago, began to throb with a dull, familiar ache. It seemed the onlookers were more invested in the ghost of their relationship than the actual people involved. Camille's Instagram says she's single. But Nate, does anyone actually know? He went dark after the breakup. Dropped out of the loop completely. Now the only place I see him is on Bloomberg. Please, the man is a machine. No scandals, no tabloid shots, just work. There's no way he has a girlfriend. Makes sense. When you lose the love of your life that young, everyone else is just noise. Why did they actually break up anyway? Classic ego. She wanted to head to the Sorbonne. He was being a prick about it. They both leaned into the drama instead of the compromise. Ugh, it's like a second chance romance novel waiting to happen. I'm obsessed. They kept spinning the fantasy, and I kept my mouth shut. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I was the noise. Was I just the compromise he made when he realized he couldn't have the real thing? I reached over to turn off the lamp, but Nate's phone lit up on the nightstand. Unknown. I'm back, Nate. There was no contact name, but I didn't need one. Only Camille called him Nate with that specific, casual intimacy. He was out cold, his hand resting instinctively over my stomach as it often did in his sleep. His wedding ring, cold against my skin through my silk nightgown, felt heavier than usual tonight. A wave of nausea hit me. My thumb hovered over his screen, wanting to delete the message before he could see it. I knew his passcode, 579579. It was a pattern on the keypad, a sequence I'd long convinced myself was a code for their names or some anniversary. I stared at the lock screen for 2 full minutes, my heart hammering against my ribs, before I finally set it down. Going through his phone felt beneath me. Besides, Nate didn't indulge me the way he'd indulged her. I remembered a day in 10th grade when Camille had been fuming because a freshman girl wouldn't stop texting him. Nate had just laughed, sliding his phone across the desk to her. You jealous babe, he whispered, his eyes dancing. I already blocked her, but go ahead. Check the logs. Delete anyone you don't like. I'm all yours. Thinking about it now kept the sleep away. I stayed awake until 7, when the light finally started to bleed through the curtains. Nate's internal clock was usually surgical. He was a man of routines: gym, shower, black coffee, office. But today he stayed in bed. He stared at his phone for a long time, his thumbs moving slowly as he typed. He didn't get up until 8. Nate, I called out as he stood by the dresser. Yeah, the high school centennial is this weekend. Are you going? We weren't the kind of couple that shared everything. We shared a bed, a mortgage, and a quiet life, yet I had to find out about the biggest event of the year from a group chat while he slept inches away. He paused, adjusting his cufflinks. Yeah. Are you? I shook my head. High school wasn't a highlight reel for me. For most people, it was a place to visit old haunts and mentors. For me, it was a museum of humiliations. He didn't push. He probably didn't want me there anyway. I glanced at my own phone. The group chat was at 100+ notifications. Camille had finally emerged from the shadows. Just woke up. Can't wait to see everyone next week. The replies were instantaneous. The queen has returned. Did you see all the stuff we were saying last night? I thought you muted us. I feel like a fan caught stalking a celebrity. Camille sent a playful winking emoji. It's fine. I found it interesting. That word felt like a weight in my gut. Interesting. So, is Nate actually coming? He's always flying off to Tokyo or London. Does he even remember us mere mortals? I can't believe the guy who used to set off illegal fireworks for Camille is now a boring CEO. Is he even coming? Can anyone confirm the legend will be there? Camille's reply popped up a second later. Don't worry. He just texted me. He'll be there. Claire. Nate was standing in the doorway, checking his watch. Aren't you getting up? You're going to be late. 8:30. I scrambled out of bed, forcing the phone out of my mind. I had a 9 o'clock appointment to play chess with Mr. Jackson at the retirement villa. I'm a stickler for time. I hate being late. It's a habit born from a lifetime of trying to be invisible, except for that one time in junior year. A massive pileup on the highway had stalled the bus. I jumped out and ran the last half mile, gasping for air as I reached the school gates. I had 1 minute left before the bell. Nate was there too. He was leaning against the brick wall, leisurely eating a breakfast burrito. He could have made it easily, but he just stood there. He even bent down to slowly tie his shoe, watching the clock tick down. He waited until he saw Camille jogging up from the parking lot, breathless and beautiful. He hadn't been late because of the traffic. He'd stayed outside to be late with her. I looked at him now, sitting at our breakfast table, sipping his coffee and reading the journal. On a whim, I decided to test the waters. Nate, I'm running behind. Do you think you could drop me off? He didn't look up from the paper. I have a meeting at 10. I'll have my driver take you. I blinked. Right. Thanks. No problem. Thank you and no problem. That was the vocabulary of our marriage. We were polite. We were considerate. We were strangers who knew how each other liked their eggs. The driver got me there on time. Mr. Jackson was already waiting in the gazebo, his eyes twinkling. He was a grumpy old man who cheated at chess and talked too much, which was why no one else would play with him. We'd become unlikely friends over the years. At the time, I had known he was Nate's grandfather. To me, he was just Arthur, the man who complained about his stubborn, blockhead grandson. Claire, dear, Arthur said, waving a hand in front of my face. You're miles away today. You just walked right into a scholar's mate. I looked down. The board was a disaster. I forced a smile. You got me, Arthur. I'm off my game. He studied me, his eyes sharp. Did you and Nate have a fight? I shook my head. We didn't fight. We didn't have enough friction to spark a flame, let alone a fire. That boy, Arthur sighed. He's always been emotionally stunted. I'll have a word with him. The idea of Nate being stunted was almost funny. In high school, he was the definition of soulful. He was a romantic extremist. He bought roses for every girl in the senior class just so Camille wouldn't feel singled out by her strict parents. He'd braved a suspension to light up the sky with her name. I'd seen the roses. I'd seen the fireworks. I was just the girl in the background, benefiting from the fallout of his love for someone else. The realization hit me then, sharp and cold. I was afraid. I have spent my life waiting for the 50% off stickers at the grocery store, waiting for the last bus in the rain, waiting in the foster system for a family that never came. I was falling into the old habit again. I was waiting for the inevitable, waiting for Nate to realize he still loved her, waiting for the we need to talk conversation, waiting to be discarded. Usually, the waiting was a numb, dull thing, but this time it hurt. I decided, for the first time in my life, to be brave. I went to Nate's office. I rehearsed the questions in my head the whole way there. Do you still love her? Are we over? I didn't even make it past the lobby. The receptionist gave me a polished, pitying smile. I'm sorry, Mrs. Vance, but Nate is in a closed-door session unless it's an emergency. I wasn't even sure if Nate wanted his employees to know he was married to someone like me. I hadn't pushed for a public profile. It's fine, I said. I pulled out my phone to call him. just as the elevator dinged. Nate walked out, surrounded by a phalanx of EPs. He looked at his phone, a flicker of confusion crossing his face, but he didn't answer. I hung up instinctively. He was walking slower than usual, leaning back to listen to someone behind him. As they cleared the corner, I saw her. Camille. She looked exactly the same, the kind of timeless beauty that didn't need filters. She was walking beside him, her hand occasionally brushing his arm. Is that the same ringtone? She asked, her voice carrying across the lobby. I can't believe you still use that piano track. It was my favorite. 17-year-old Nate listened to nothing but grunge and heavy metal, but Camille loved Chopin. Nate had changed his entire world for her. Apparently, he'd never changed it back. The receptionist cleared her throat. See? I told you he was busy. Right, I whispered. Thank you. I went home and crawled into bed. I just wanted to sleep it off, but the group chat was a wildfire. OMG, guess who I just saw at Le Bernardine? Nate and Camille. It's happening. The endgame is finally here. Camille, give us the tea. Is the flame back on? Camille posted a photo. A view of the city, a glass of expensive red, and a man's forearm resting on the table. You couldn't see his face, but I knew those veins that watched those fingers. The food here is still incredible, she captioned it. I zoomed in on his hand. The hand I'd held every night for 2 years. His wedding ring was gone. Nate came home early. He didn't come to the bedroom. He went out to the balcony and lit a cigarette. He'd quit the day we got married. Seeing her had clearly broken his resolve. When he finally came inside and showered, he climbed into bed and pulled me against him. It was a rare gesture of affection outside of our sex life. Claire, he whispered into my hair, we should talk. About what? The divorce? The fact that you're moving her into my spot? My breath hitched. I felt my body go rigid. Never mind, he sighed, sensing my tension. Why did you call me today? You never call the office. It was an accident. I lied. A pocket dial. Oh, I figured. That night, he was different. He kissed me with a slow, agonizing tenderness that felt like a goodbye. I'd always preferred it when he was a little rough, a little wild in those moments. I could see the ghost of the boy he used to be. I knew he was capable of passion. I'd seen him fight for her, seen him laugh until he couldn't breathe. With me, he was always so quiet. I realized then that I couldn't do this anymore. I didn't have a family to turn to. I only had Arthur. The next afternoon, I sat with Arthur at the chessboard. I stared at the pieces, unable to see a way out. The first rule of chess: if you're in a losing position, don't play for a draw. Fold. Arthur, I said softly. I don't think I can solve this one. He looked at the board, then at me. He reached out and swept the pieces into a messy pile. Then start over, he said. He was right. The seasons were changing. I didn't bother swapping my summer clothes for winter ones. I didn't restock the pantry. I started packing my books into cardboard boxes. Nate found me in the study, looking at the half-empty shelves. Where are your books? I'm donating them, I said. Another lie. I just didn't want to be scrambling when the time came. I'd rehearsed my speech 100 times. I walked to his home office that night and stood outside the door, taking 3 deep breaths. I turned the handle. Nate was at his desk, one hand over his eyes, the other holding his phone. Camille, I can handle the logistics on this end, he was saying, his voice weary but soft. It's been too long. I don't want to wait anymore. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I backed away and closed the door. He was in more of a hurry than I was. He was just waiting for the right moment to handle me. That night, I didn't wait for the perfect moment. I chose the most abrupt one. As he leaned in to kiss my neck, I pulled away. Nate, I said, my voice steady. I want a divorce. His lips stopped. In the shadows of the room, Nate lifted his head. I couldn't see his eyes, but I felt the temperature drop. What did you just say? A divorce, I repeated, every syllable a stone. Click. The bedside lamp flooded the room with harsh yellow light. Nate sat up, his face unreadable. Claire, we need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. The assets the house, your lawyers can draw up whatever is fair. I'll sign it. I turned my back to him, pulling the duvet up. I heard him sigh a long, heavy sound before he got up and walked out of the room. I didn't sleep. My mind drifted back to the girl I used to be, the girl Nate never asked about. Maybe he was afraid of the awkwardness. Maybe he just didn't care. I was the invisible girl, the scholarship kid, the orphan. I remembered the way people looked at me when they found out I lived in a group home. The way they'd sneer when they saw me drinking tap water. The breaking point had been over 50 cents. I'd picked up lunch for my roommates. The bill was $5.50. One girl gave me $5. When I asked for the other 50 cents, I became the villain. Foster kids, they whispered. They're so stingy. No social cues. No wonder no one wanted to adopt her. It started with whispers. Then it became a wall of silence. I was the girl no one partnered with in gym. The girl on the very edge of the class photo, half cropped out. Those 3 years were a slow suffocation. Nate had been the only light in that dark place. When we met again as adults, I had clung to him like a life raft. I was greedy for the scraps of warmth he gave me. For the next few days, we were ghosts. He left before I woke and came home after I went to bed. At 3 a.m. on the 4th night, I went to the kitchen for water. I saw him on the balcony, the cherry of his cigarette glowing in the dark. Is the paperwork ready? I asked. He extinguished the cigarette and looked at me, his expression cold. He didn't say a word. He just walked past me and retreated into his study. The ashtray on the balcony was overflowing. I didn't know what he was brooding over, and I didn't want to care. 3 days before the reunion, the class president tagged everyone in the group chat for final headcount. At Claire Descorvey, are you in our class? Did you join the wrong group? No, wait. Is that Claire Hastings? The one who stole the money. The shame hit me like a physical blow. It was a Tuesday in April. I'd stayed in the classroom during gym because of cramps. Nate was there, too, sleeping in the back row. When the class returned, a girl named Tiffany claimed $50 was missing from her bag. She was the only one here, they'd said. Who else would care about $50? She's a thief. I bet she's the one who's been using my shampoo in the dorms, too. I'd sat there, trembling, whispering it wasn't me, but no one heard. Nate had woken up then. He sat up slowly, looking bored. Shut up, he'd said, his voice raspy. She said she didn't do it. But Nate, she was right here, dash. Nate had stood up, holding out his own bag. I was here too. You want to frisk me? Go ahead. No one touched him. He was the golden boy. The drama ended there, but the stigma never left. Now, 8 years later, they still remembered me as the thief. I was about to leave the chat when a friend request popped up. Camille Sterling. A second later, a message followed. I know about you and Nate. We met the day before the centennial. I had tried to build a life. I was prettier now, more confident, more successful. But standing in front of Camille, I felt like that girl in the oversized thrift store sweater again. She was already at the cafe, waving me over with a perfect, practiced smile. It's been so long, Claire, she said. We had barely spoken in 3 years of school. Now, we were sitting across from each other because of the same man. Everyone else forgot you, Camille said, stirring her latte. But I remember. You always had a crush on him, didn't you? I didn't answer. A girl knows, she continued. I saw the way you looked at him. Every time he walked into a room, you'd hold your breath. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but I forced myself to look her in the eye. Yes, I loved him then. She laughed. Don't be embarrassed. Everyone did. Tell me, was it because he saved you from that thief accusation? Did you know why he did that? I froze. I asked him about it later, Camille said, leaning in. I asked why he bothered helping a nobody like Claire Hastings. Do you know what he said? He said, who? He didn't even know your name. He only did it because he and I had just had a fight, and he was in a bad mood. He just wanted to shut everyone up. The words were like needles. Nate told me about the marriage, she went on. When we broke up, I told him to wait for me. 6 years. That's how long it took for me to finish my master's and come home. And that's exactly when you two got married, wasn't it? It was 2 years ago. I thought it was a gift from the universe. Now I realized I was just the consolation prize he took when he got tired of waiting. It was my fault for being late, Camille sighed. When I found out it was you, I felt guilty. Nate shouldn't have used an old classmate to get back at me, but I also felt relieved. She smiled, a cruel, beautiful thing. I'm glad it's you. If it were some woman who was actually his equal, I might be worried he'd actually fallen in love. I felt a spark of something I'd never felt before. Anger. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I don't want to see you humiliated, Claire. As an old friend, I think you should know the truth. I don't believe you, I said, standing up. Camille looked stunned. I don't know what your game is, I said, grabbing my purse. But if you were so sure of his love, you wouldn't be here trying to convince me of it. I walked out without looking back. Behind me, she called out. He told me he doesn't regret it. He's over the anger. Don't you see? I went straight to Arthur. I needed the truth from someone who didn't have a stake in the lie. Nate told me you asked for a divorce, Arthur said as soon as I sat down. I'm sorry, Arthur. Sweetheart, he sighed. I've seen how you look at him, and I've seen how he is. If there's a problem, it's him, not you. I was greedy, I whispered. I shouldn't have pushed you two together, Arthur admitted. But Nate, he spent all day yesterday sitting here with me. He asked me what he should do. His first love is back, I said, my voice breaking. Arthur shook his head. When they broke up, his parents offered her $2 million to stay in Europe. She took it. Nate didn't stop her. He was depressed for a year, I won't lie to you. But Claire, if Nate wanted to be with her, all he had to do was buy a plane ticket. He stayed. He married you. And he didn't do it because of me. He did it because he wanted to. I didn't have to force his parents to accept you. He handled that himself. I looked up, stunned. My grandson is a stubborn man, Arthur said. Go talk to him. Really talk to him. The morning of the centennial, Nate was gone before I woke. He was avoiding me. When I saw him in the hallway, he turned and walked out the door so fast it was almost comical. I spent the morning getting ready. I chose a champagne-colored silk slip dress Nate had bought me on a business trip to Milan. I'd never worn it. I was afraid I'd look plain in it. Standing in front of the mirror, I realized I didn't look plain at all. When I arrived at the school, the ribbon cutting was in full swing. Nate was at the center of it all, standing next to the principal. He looked regal. A few former classmates whispered as I walked by. Is that Claire? No way. She's gorgeous. I smiled at them. Hi, I'm Claire. They scrambled away. I saw them pointing at me, their heads together. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to hide. Nate caught my eye from across the quad. His gaze was intense, almost pleading. Camille. He's looking at you, someone squealed. Camille was standing nearby with Tiffany. She didn't say anything, but she shot me a look of pure venom. The after-party was at a local bistro. Camille was at the head of the table, basking in the attention. Where's Nate? Someone asked. He had to head back for work. Camille said smoothly. I just gotten a text from Nate. Where are you? I sent him a photo of the table. So, Camille. Tiffany smirked. Tell us about the ring Nate was wearing today. Is it an engagement ring? Camille blushed and looked away. Don't ask. The table erupted in cheers, assuming it was a yes. I just sat there sipping my wine. And what about you, Claire? Tiffany turned her sights on me. You look like you've done well for yourself. Finally outgrown those itchy fingers. The table went silent. I'm doing great, I said. Good. I guess when you're that poor, you do what you have to. We forgive you though. Do you have proof? I asked. What? Proof that I stole your money. Because if you don't, I'm prepared to sue for defamation. The silence turned deafening. Camille tried to intervene. Claire, she's just joking. We're all friends here, Dash. Are we? I stood up, looking at every face at the table. Most of you owe me an apology. I came here wondering if anyone had changed. But you're all still the same shallow, cruel, and small. If I hear one more word about that money, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. I walked out of the bistro, the sound of my heels clicking on the floor, the only noise in the room. I felt 10 pounds lighter. I was walking down the street, heels in my hand, when a coat was draped over my shoulders. Nate took the heels from my hand and walked beside me. You look happy, he said. Is it that obvious? You were practically skipping. I went quiet for a moment. Maybe I am. Is the thought of divorcing me that liberating? I didn't know how to answer that. Maybe. Well, my legal team is pretty slow, Nate said, his voice casual. It might take a year to process the paperwork. Can you wait that long? I'll take nothing, I said. Just make it fast. He stopped walking and turned me to face him. But they're also very good. If I don't want the divorce to happen, they could drag it out for a decade. What are you saying, Nate? I'm saying I don't think our marriage is beyond saving. I stared at him. He didn't love me. Why was he doing this? Before I could ask, he picked me up and carried me to his car. Inside the warmth of the SUV, I handed him his coat. He looked at me, his eyes lingering on the dress. I have good taste, he murmured. That dress looks incredible on you. I thought you hated it because you never wore it. I loved it, I admitted. Good. I'll buy you more. Nate, that's not Dash. Claire. He took my hands. I've been an idiot. I haven't used my words. I spent the last week spiraling because you suddenly asked for a divorce, and I finally realized it started the day Camille showed up. I loved her once, but that ended the second she took that check and boarded that plane. I have principles, Claire. I don't start a marriage I don't intend to keep, and I don't cheat. The car was silent. My heart was thumping so hard I thought he could hear it. Claire, he said, a nervous edge to his voice. Say something. I'm actually kind of terrified here. Questions started pouring out of me. The day a driver took me, why weren't you wearing your ring? I wear it every day. It had a scratch, so I sent it to be buffed. He looked at my bare hand. You're the one who never wears yours. It's heavy, I whispered. What about the passcode? 579,579. It's a pattern, Claire. I've used it since my first Motorola Razr. It doesn't mean anything. You had dinner with her. She's a representative for our European partners. I didn't know it was her until she showed up at the office. I told her I was married. To you. And she told me some things about our time in high school. What did she say? She told me how people treated you. How I was too busy being a brat to notice the girl who was hurting right in front of me. I wanted to talk to you about it that night, but you seemed so tense, and I didn't want to force you to relive it. Everything Camille had told me was a lie. But the phone call I heard you say you didn't want to wait anymore. Nate groaned, rubbing his temples. The project, Claire. The European merger. They were dragging their feet, and I was telling her the board was ready to pull the plug. He took my hand, sliding the wedding ring now polished and bright back onto my finger. No divorce, he asked. I'm a man of principle, but if you say yes again, I'm going to fight like hell to keep you. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the boy who had once stood up for a girl whose name he didn't even know. I don't know, I whispered, a smile tugging at my lips. That's okay, he said, pulling me into a kiss. We have time. And